Congratulations! You just spent 2 hours at the gym doing 25 sets of chest and you've successfully accomplished absolutely nothing. Well, that's not entirely true. You've successfully made yourself too tired to actually grow any muscle. You're addicted to the pump because it's easier than actually training with intensity. You're not training, you're playing at training. And the worst part? You've been doing this for months, maybe years, and you look exactly the same as you did last January. Same arms, same chest, same excuses. Today, we're going to talk about the math, because your body does not care about your hustle, your dedication, or your 2-hour grind. It cares about one thing: its recovery budget. Stick around or go back to your 20-set ego trip. I genuinely don't care, but your t-shirt size might. Let's start with the number that's going to make you uncomfortable: 3 to 10. That is the scientifically validated range of weekly sets per muscle group that actually produces hypertrophy. Not 20, not 25, 3 to 10. This comes from dose-response research on muscle protein synthesis, the biological process that actually builds the tissue you claim to care about. Below 3 sets, you're undertrained. Above 10, you are not working harder, you are making a withdrawal from an account you can't afford to overdraft. Think of your recovery capacity like a bank account. Every set you perform is a transaction. Every rep taken close to failure costs more than a junk rep performed half-heartedly in the middle of a set you should have ended 3 reps earlier. Sleep, nutrition, and time deposit recovery currency back into that account. Here's the problem. Most of you are spending like you have unlimited credit. You do not. You have a fixed weekly budget, and right now you are blowing it on sets 11 through 25, sets that produce no additional hypertrophic stimulus but cost you significant systemic fatigue. This is called junk volume, and junk volume doesn't make you look good, it makes you look tired, it makes you plateau, it makes you post "why am I not growing" in online forums while still refusing to change anything about your programming. The research is not subtle here. Schoenfeld, Krieger, Israeltel, the people who actually study this for a living, all point toward the same conclusion. More volume only helps up to a threshold, and most recreational lifters exceeded that threshold 6 sets ago. Past that point, you're not adding stimulus, you're adding damage. And unlike productive damage, the microtrauma that drives adaptation, junk volume damage just sits there eating into your recovery budget like a subscription you forgot to cancel. You have 3 to 10 sets per week per muscle group. That is your budget. Spend it like it's the last money you have, because biologically, it is. Let's do some uncomfortable math together. You're doing 20 sets of chest per week. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this question. How hard are those sets? Because if you can do 20 sets of chest in a week and walk out of the gym feeling tired but good, I have a clinical diagnosis for you. You are not training hard. You are moving weight repeatedly with the intensity of someone who is mostly thinking about what they're going to eat afterward. Here's the physiological reality. If sets 15 through 20 are even possible, sets 1 through 5 were nowhere near hard enough. Productive hypertrophic training, the kind that actually forces your body to build new contractile tissue, is deeply uncomfortable. It requires proximity to muscular failure, and muscular failure done correctly is not something you can sustain for 20 sets. Not because you're weak, because you're human, because you have a nervous system with limits, because muscle protein synthesis has a ceiling per session, and your body hit it long before you finished your 4th exercise. What you are doing with sets 6 through 20 is essentially cardio with barbells. You're accumulating fatigue without accumulating stimulus. You're burning calories while actively impairing your ability to recover and grow. You've convinced yourself that more is more because more feels like effort. It feels like discipline. It feels like you're doing something. But feeling tired is not the same thing as training productively. Your body doesn't care how tired you feel. It cares about the signal you sent it, and the signal from junk volume is noise. Here's another way to look at it. If you were genuinely training sets 1 through 5 at the correct intensity, you wouldn't have the muscular or neurological capacity to perform sets 6 through 20 with enough load to matter. The fact that you can do all 20 sets is evidence, clinical, mathematical, biological evidence that you are sandbagging the important ones. You are preserving yourself for a volume of work that does not need to exist. Cut the filler. Stop mistaking duration for effort. Your body grows from quality stress, not quantity of motion. This brings us to the piece of the puzzle that most people avoid because it requires honesty, and honesty about your own training is the rarest commodity in any gym on earth. Reps in reserve. RIR, the number of reps you could have done at the end of a set before reaching true muscular failure. This number tells you everything about whether your set actually counted, and the rule is simple: 0 to 2 RIR. That's it. If you finished a set and you had 5 reps left in the tank, I have news for you. That was not a working set. That was a warm-up you happened to log. You made your muscles mildly uncomfortable and then stopped, which is the training equivalent of getting in the pool and refusing to get your hair wet. You showed up, you did not train. Research is unambiguous. Sets performed far from failure produce significantly less hypertrophic stimulus than sets performed close to or at failure. The proximity to failure is the stimulus. It's the threshold your body needs to cross before it decides adaptation is necessary. Fall short of that threshold consistently, and your body makes a very rational decision. Nothing needs to change. Your body is not sentimental. It doesn't build muscle because you worked hard. It builds muscle because you gave it a reason to, a mechanical and metabolic stress signal strong enough to justify the metabolic cost of synthesizing new protein. That signal comes from proximity to failure, not from volume, not from sweat, from effort at the end of a set. Now, with this information, the correct structure becomes obvious. 1 to 3 sets per exercise, each performed at 0 to 2 RIR. That's the elite minimum. That's the protocol. Not because I'm asking you to do less, but because doing less correctly produces more than doing more incorrectly. And the data has been showing us this for decades, while you've been doing your 20th set of cable flies. 1 to 3 sets, 0 to 2 reps in reserve. Every single time. If you can't commit to that level of effort, then the number of sets you're doing is completely irrelevant. Here's the moment in the video where most fitness content tells you to push through it, to dig deeper, to embrace the grind, to trust the process even when the process clearly isn't working. I'm not going to do that. If your numbers aren't going up, if the weight isn't increasing, if the reps aren't increasing, if something isn't progressing, the correct response is to do less, not more, less. This is not motivational advice. This is biology. Here's what's happening when you stall. Your recovery capacity is being outpaced by your training demand. You are spending more than you're depositing. The account is negative. And the solution to a negative bank account is not to spend more money. It's to reduce expenditure until the balance recovers. This is not complicated. It is, however, deeply offensive to the ego of someone who has been taught their whole life that effort is a virtue in itself. Effort is only a virtue when it's calibrated correctly. Uncalibrated effort is just damage accumulation. And if you respond to stalling by adding more sets, more exercises, more days, more intensity, you are not solving the problem. You are compounding it. You are the biological equivalent of someone who, upon realizing they're lost, decides to drive faster. The protocol for regression is this: add a rep in reserve or remove a set. That's it. Give your system more breathing room. Let recovery catch up to demand. Watch your performance stabilize, then improve. Then you can add intensity back in, slowly, deliberately, with data. The push-through-it mentality isn't grit. It's a refusal to understand the machine you're operating. Your body is not a motivational poster. It's a biological system with inputs and outputs. And if the outputs have stopped being what you want, you don't yell at it, you adjust the inputs. Do less, recover more, grow. Enough philosophy. Here's what you're actually going to do. First, audit your current volume. Write down every muscle group and how many sets per week you're currently performing. Be honest, count everything. You will almost certainly discover you're above 10 sets for at least 1 or 2 muscle groups. Those are your immediate targets for reduction. Second, cap your weekly sets at 10 per muscle group. For most people, especially those who have been plateaued, starting at 6 to 8 sets per week per muscle group is a smarter entry point. This gives you room to add volume progressively if needed, and it ensures your recovery budget isn't immediately overdrawn. Third, restructure your exercises to 1 to 3 sets each. Pick your highest value movements, the ones with the most range of motion, the most muscle fiber recruitment, the most load capacity. Keep those. Eliminate the accessories that exist because you had time to fill, not because they were producing results. Fourth, log your RIR honestly. After every set, write down how many reps you had left. If the number is consistently above 2, you are not training at the required intensity. Increase the load or reduce rest time until you're operating in the 0 to 2 RIR window on every working set. Fifth, track progression weekly. You should see a number go up every single week, weight, reps, or both. If a number doesn't go up for 2 consecutive weeks, implement the regression protocol. Add an RIR or drop a set and hold that position until progression resumes. This is not a complicated system. It's a minimal, high-signal system, which is exactly why most people won't follow it. Because it doesn't feel like enough. Because it won't fill 2 hours. Because walking out of the gym after 45 minutes of genuinely hard, well-structured work feels like cheating when you've been conditioned to equate duration with discipline. It's not cheating, it's just correct. Let's review what you learned today in case you were too busy mentally defending your 20-set program to absorb it the first time. 3 to 10 sets per muscle group per week, 1 to 3 sets per exercise, 0 to 2 reps in reserve on every working set. If you're stalling, do less, not more. Log everything and let the numbers tell you the truth your ego refuses to. That's the whole system. It fits on an index card. It runs in 45 minutes, and it will produce more muscle growth than anything you've been doing for the past year because it's structured around how your body actually works, rather than how hustle culture has convinced you it should. Here's my challenge to you. 3 weeks, that's all. 3 weeks of actually following this protocol. The real sets, the real RIR, the real volume caps. And then compare your numbers to where they were. Not how you feel, not how tired you were. The numbers. Because the numbers don't lie. They don't have a social media page to maintain, and they are not impressed by how long you spent in the gym. You now know more about productive training than 90% of the people currently wasting time in your gym. Whether you use that knowledge or go back to your comfortable, ineffective, ego-soothing volume habit is entirely up to you. I'll be here. The gains might not be.